Two Davids Walk Into a Bar was filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Listening to Two Davids Walk Into a Bar. I'm here, as always, with Mr. David Lawler. How are you today, sir?
Well, I'm pissed off, Dave. How about you?
I'm pissed off, too. We had an argument before we were recording the show, but we're still willing to work together because we love each other and we're brothers in arms. We're talking about...
I will make that a pre-roll, I think.
I'm sure you will, and I'll come out smelling like a rose because I always do.
Uh-huh.
So, okay, so...
and on this St. Patrick's Day, maybe I should cut you an Irish rose. There we go.
I was doing a lot of that at work last night, actually.
Cutting of Irish roses. What are we talking about?
Oh, wait a minute. I have to plug you.
Oh, yeah. The plug.
Okay, so he did some great articles called Vintage Cable Box, and you can find them on blissville.net and vhsrewind.com. Great articles.
I remember that. As a matter of fact, one of my last correspondences with my friend Scott Becker, who died recently, he was a big fan of my vintage cable box stuff. And we had this long conversation about Jaws 3 and how much we both loved it.
I actually have a small memory of that. I remember watching it
because we both saw it in the theater. We both saw it in the theater with 3D glasses.
I caught it on Showtime, so it'd be like summer '84. It would have been on Showtime.
This was like summer. It was hot as hell. We go in there, we get our 3D glasses, and this was what 3D movies looked like back then. You know.
Now, was this the sort of the blue and red?
Yes. You
okay.
Put on,
yeah, I think I was seeing Return of the Jedi for like the second time, and it was in the same theater.
Right.
And I think that I saw like people were getting their glasses, and they were the blue and red ones. And because I think it was the same with in some theaters it was like for Friday the 13th 3D.
Yeah.
There was a special process where it was like more sort of a polarized kind of like what you get in the theaters now. Mm-hmm. And some theaters cheaped out and did the blue and red. Other ones did like the better process, I think.
Well, it was like they varied in quality. Like Jaws 3D looked like crap. The Man Who Wasn't There looked like crap. But a movie like Space Hunter: Adventures in the Forbidden Zone looked pretty damn good.
Yeah. I saw Metal Storm. I saw Metal Storm.
The Destruction of Jared Sin. A Charles.
I saw that one in 3D. I remember that.
3D had a mini boom in the early 80s for a little while, and then it disappeared again because I guess.
And then it came back, and now it's gone again.
Well, I mean, that kind of 3D was fine. I could deal with it. I could not deal with this new 3D that they have. It kind of makes me nauseous. It makes me dizzy and disoriented, and makes me suffer from vertigo these days looking at it. It kind of just looks like Adobe Photoshop layers that are moving around too much on the screen for me.
It can, yeah.
So we are going to talk about the remainder of those basic cable stations and this enormous series that we've been doing, Life Unscripted. We're going to be talking about. But first, I mean, we're going to talk about FX and its various offshoots, and how FX kind of, in my opinion anyway, opened the door for this kind of uncensored cable television experience that we now have.
Yeah. That would be kind of a few years after its launch. And I have some
FX started as it was different. It was mostly movies at first.
Yeah, I remember there was actually, like, if you want to go pre-FX, I'm just going to pull this out of my ass. There was the Fox movie channel.
Yeah.
And it was basically just all their old movies. And it was like, it was this weird thing. I think that started like a couple years before, or maybe even around the same time. And it was just, and then they would show a lot of Fox movies, like Zardoz would come on. It was always that was cool. A few movies that were just released by Fox, but weren't, like, I'm thinking like Highlander. You know, basically anything that was released, it wouldn't even on video, it wouldn't even be on Fox Video, but somehow if it was released by Fox, it would be on this Fox movie channel. And I would watch a lot of their movies. They would show those Planet of the Apes TV movies that are like episodes that they cut into TV. I remember when they showed those. That was on, but the actual FX channel, I remember when it started.
1994, June 1st.
1994, summer 94, I remember. And they started showing like reruns of Greatest American Hero and Nanny and the Professor. Those are the first FX memories I have in my brain of what they were showing. It was basically like kind of like USA Network when they started, where they just showed what they could get and reruns and things like that.
It wasn't, when it started out for me, it wasn't anything I was interested in watching, I guess. Or maybe it just came at the wrong time for me, because around that time I was beginning to explore girls and such. So I was working constantly. So it was a different time for me. Television just sort of became secondary in my life at that time.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like for me now. Yeah.
So, but these were like these critically acclaimed, highly respected shows that were coming on at the time, like The Shield, of course.
Yeah, that's when they started dropping, like, I think not F-bombs, but S-bombs.
Well, they were getting, they were definitely cursing quite a bit.
Showing Michael Chiklis's ass, I think.
Now, Michael Chiklis, he started in a show called The Commish, right?
The Commish, and it was weird because he was playing this kind of like guy he was like in his like late 20s when he did The Commish. Like, he's not really that old now. Like,
well, yeah. Also, what was he? He was John Belushi in that movie Wired when he was.
That's where that's what I remember. He started, I think. The Commish may have been right after, like the Commish might have come on, because I remember the Wired movie. It was made like 86, 87, but didn't actually come out to like 88, 89, just because of like between the legal wranglings and the studio that produced it. It was like this whole thing, and then it finally came out on a small studio, released it, and then it became like on like IVE home video or something like, and yeah, I remember, and I think probably what happened was he got the notoriety from the movie that never got released, and then that's how he got the Commish. That'd be my guess. Yeah,
and then he does The Shield. Later on, he appears on Gotham, because we watched Gotham in the house.
Well, you can't forget he also played the Thing in those two Fantastic Four movies. And what was great about like this was like you knew him from the Commish. You knew him as this sort of doughy, balding, like schlubby kind of guy on the Commish.
And angry. He was very angry.
And then he goes to the Shield, and on the Shield he's like this buff. He's still this weird sort of, I'm not gonna say fat, but like compact.
He's like angry. He's dangerous looking too.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he just looks like a guy you don't want to fuck with. It's the same with Gotham. He was the Commish on the Gotham, but it was a Shield kind of a Commish, and then he becomes a kind of supervillain because he's exposed to some kind of a thing that. I forget who it was. Another supervillain created some kind of a chemical that makes people crazy and then gives them powers, and then he turns into like this warrior of vigilantism for justice or something like that. But he's crazy, so he's like a bad guy.
All right.
But great actor, fine actor, carried that show for years. Then you have a show called Nip Tuck, which actually, if I'm not mistaken, shows a lot of nudity. And
maybe it was in a medical context they could show more.
Yeah, and it was like, I guess, the story of two plastic surgeons. And one of them was a dude from Charmed.
And like
Julian McMahon.
And that's another guy that went over to Fantastic Four. It's like two people from FX shows went over and did Fantastic Four. I remember.
It kind of fades off for me a little bit, because the only thing I remember after that, there was Rescue Me, the Dennis Leary show.
Rescue Me. I'm thinking Son of the Beach.
Son of the Beach. That lasted for about 2 years, right?
2, maybe 3. I remember that was a Howard Stern production. He always complained about how nobody.
Baywatch parody with Jamie Bergman.
And it was funny. Like there was this one character, like, and he kept making these weird sort of Nazi references because he was like, his name was like Chip Rommel, and he was like kind of the big guy, and he would end up actually playing Arnold Schwarzenegger in a TV movie about Arnold Schwarzenegger. I remember him. And he'd make all these like weird jokes. He made this one. He was so proud of this. He built a camp for kids where they could think. He built a concentration camp.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Things like that. Yeah.
Sounds just a little bit politically incorrect there.
Oh, of course. Well, but it was produced by Howard Stern, so it was okay. You know.
Yeah, but everybody calls everybody Nazis now. I mean, it's like.
Well, there's a lot of Nazis.
If you don't agree with me, you're a Nazi. Now, what is FX doing now? The thing about Rescue Me was my wife was a very big Dennis Leary fan. She loved Dennis Leary, and then she tried to watch this Rescue Me. She didn't like it. She just said it was basically wall-to-wall sex, and it was like angry standing up against the wall, pants still on sex kind of stuff, you know.
That sounds fine to me.
I know why Dennis Leary did the show is because he was one of the people who was early supporter of the firefighters from 9/11, you know, and he did this show as a kind of tribute to firefighters.
Oh, you're right. That was after, because I'm trying to do the math of when Rescue Me was like 2003 when it started or something. Yeah. That's probably how it sort of grew out of that.
Yeah. It was fairly popular for being on a cable station.
And he did this show, and I don't know if it's still on, like Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. It's like a recent one. It's almost like Rescue Me, but he's like a rock and roll, ex-rock and roll roller or something. Yeah. I don't know if it lasted, how long it lasted. I don't think it's on anymore. Maybe it is.
He used to go like on the Daily Show to promote that stuff.
Oh, dare we bring up Louis C.K. and his show Louis?
I watched Louis the first couple of seasons until he started to get serious. And the thing about Louis C.K., I knew of Louis C.K. for years before that, because he was doing stand-up anyway, and he was a writer, and also he was back in the early days of Comedy Central, back when he still had hair. You would see him pop up on Comedy Central. Yes. But he did this show on HBO called Lucky Louie, which was incredibly funny. It was
I love that show. He only got one season.
It was like an All of the Family, but really kind of for HBO.
Although it's weird. It's kind of like you know how like someone's art will sort of imitate some of the scandals will happen in their life later, and then you realize, oh, that's where it came from, like the Woody Allen stuff with like all the weird allegations about kids, and then you
watch Manhattan, and he's in a relationship with Marilyn Hemingway. Or just him talking
about like there's like a joke in the movie Love and Death about how happiness is like like a 12-year-old girl, preferably two of them or something.
The old. The old Russian priest. He's like, I have lived many years, and after many trials and tribulations, I have found that the best thing is blonde 12-year-old girls.
Yeah.
Two of them were never possible.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Well,
so now you see it.
When the charges against Louis came out, everybody was like, oh my God! I was like, oh, I can see that.
First of all, he
openly in his stand-up routines talked about jerking off in front of people.
Yeah, he talks like that's an episode of the Lucky Louie. There's an episode where he talks about like being in the boiler room.
He
has like a magazine, and I'm like, and also as far as like the depravity of comedians. Now, if he did some stuff where the woman was not consenting to him whipping it out and doing things, then that is wrong. But it seems like it's one of those. They changed their mind after the fact. Like now they're not right with it, kind of thing. Or it's like they said they were okay with it then, but now they're not.
Yeah, this is a problem now. This is a problem now. I mean, like Tucker Carlson, they had something he said 13 years ago on Bubba the Love Sponge, and they're like, oh, he should be fired. They're really trying to fire these people based on comics. James Gunn was fired. He's now been reinstated as director.
He's been reinstated. Cooler heads prevailed, and from what I heard,
Kevin Hart was fired from the Oscars. I mean, you're gonna, people are always gonna say things that might have sound stupid 13 years ago. I don't know, but the thing is, you got to stand by it. You got to be tough. You got to be like, yeah, so what? I mean,
well, the Kevin Hart stuff. I'm just like, if you saw this, these were not just somebody being silly like James Gunn, where he was just out of being silly. Those ones were like literally like.
It was a stand-up routine. It was Eddie Murphy when Eddie Murphy made so many jokes about homosexuals.
Yeah, and then it was always Eddie Murphy
fucking funny.
Yeah, well, Eddie Murphy got cut from like. I think he was going to host or something, and then they dug up his comedy, had to do with Brett Ratner, I think, or something. Was going to produce, and he was going to host, and then like something happened with Brett Ratner, because there's always something going on with Brett Ratner.
Brett Ratner he's a guy you got to keep your eye on. You have a feeling.
He throws great parties. Him and Brian Singer throw great parties.
A guy like that, I don't particularly think he's a talented filmmaker, and is.
No, we're going off on tangents here.
But anyway, I mean, like the thing about Louis, I just wanted to make a point about Louis is that the accusations stem from two fledgling stand-up comedians who also happen to be attractive women. They were in a room with Louis once, and they were like, they wanted to talk shop, and he was like, your girls are so I'm just gonna whip it out and start jerking off right now. And the thing, there are people like that. There are people like that who are that way. I've seen them. I've been in experience.
You know, he's a comedian. Comedians are like, there's a lot of gross people, and
but the thing
I can't say that I wouldn't want to, but I usually will say, well, okay, I might get him in a smaller room and be like, hey, you want to do something? We're talking just start whipping it out.
About stand-up comedians, and the thing is, you have to have a thick skin to survive in that business anyway. And these girls are coming in pigtails, talking about how they felt victimized or violated in a kind of a collective victimized, violated way. It's Louis C.K. and this guy, he doesn't. What I always found funny about Louis C.K. is that he was so genuine in everything. His stand-up was some of the funniest shit, and this was in a day when you were permitted to laugh at these things. He talked about the most reprehensible topics, and he made them funny. And that requires a certain amount of talent, and it also requires a certain amount of experience.
He's like, he looks like a regular guy, but he has some sick, dark thoughts that almost everybody has, and he just expresses them.
Yes, and it's funny.
Yeah, it is funny.
But the problem, now, my big problem with Louis, I mean, I found Louis really funny for the first couple of years, but then he started getting into this kind of dark, I mean, for him, dark, nihilistic territory, and he started getting he started getting more artistic with his work.
Exactly. The episodes kind of got more sort of auteur. He got kind of like up his own ass. Now, if he has a show, and I gotta say, there was like the final episode, because it kind of just ran its course, and he did the last episode. The last episode was this weird thing where he's riding a subway, and then like somebody's dead, and it's like, I think his attempt is to do like, how much of a fucked up thing can I do, and I will think it's funny because it's so fucked up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it'll be this sort of weird, sort of inverse. I mean, I'm going to go off on a tangent here for a second. You remember when Steve Martin did those Pink Panther movies?
Oh, I remember. Yeah.
Okay, he did those
I do.
And I am of the opinion they are really shitty movies, but that's the one where he wants to. I went to buy hamburger. You know, I am of the opinion that he did this as some sort of, because he's a deep, smart man, and I think that he did it as some sort of weird, like, art comedy experiment of how shitty of a movie can I make, and kind of like how stupid can I be, and how much money can they pay me to do this stupid movie. And they did a sequel, so he did it twice. Yeah. You know, I think it was some sort of weird sort of like fuck you to the movie industry, because he hasn't really done anything since as far as movies, as far as I can tell.
Well, for the most part, he tends
if he wanted
write.
To, he could.
He writes with Chris Rock a lot. You know, that's what he. You know what I see? In 5 years, it'll all be forgotten. He will be forgiven. He will come back, and he will.
He has come back. He does his shows, and
he's
then every
being
once in a while,
they're watching him. They're watching.
Yeah, exactly. I'll read an article from some angry woman saying, "How dare he go back up on?"
I think that this will all blow over him in less than 5 years. I think a lot of everything that we're seeing, this Me Too stuff, because it's going to backfire on these people badly.
I figure if he did something wrong, he should be charged. But he has not been charged. And he has not been convicted. He has not done anything illegal, as far as we can tell.
Just the court of public opinion. That's
all right.
About it.
Well, okay. In that case, he can go out. Hell, OJ can go out and do things if he wants to.
I'm not too sure about OJ. I've got
Speaking of OJ, this perfectly dovetails back into FX for a second.
Okay.
They do these American Horror Story shows.
Yeah.
That is very popular. That's like their most popular show. It gets like huge ratings.
I have not even seen an episode. I've heard so much about it, but I haven't seen it.
Excellent show. You have Netflix now, so I think it's on there.
Well,
excellent
maybe we'll get around.
And then they kind of spun it off into these American crime stories.
Yeah.
And the first one they did was OJ. Mm-hmm. They did the whole OJ thing, and John Travolta looked very disturbing as his lawyer. I can't remember his name with the eyebrows.
Shapiro, Robert Shapiro.
He plays Shapiro.
He was the lawyer. He was like, I'm here to represent my client over here. Hey, this is OJ. You remember him? He was in the Towering Inferno.
And David Schwimmer plays Kardashian, his friend.
Remember how Howard Stern used to do John Revolting impersonations? John Revolting.
They just did a really good thing and again, that's also on Netflix, about the Andrew Cunanan and Versace, and he killed Versace and that whole thing, and the whole sort of gay underworld and everything.
The gay underworld.
The
underpants mafia.
Really yeah.
Well, one more thought about Louis is that I think that he will become. he has a great eye for filmmaking, and he will become an excellent, once he's past all this, he'll become,
well,
like,
okay,
we're talking like Woody Allen or Mel Brooks.
Well, that's
status.
the thing. He made a movie that he had to buy back because they wouldn't release it, because it's all about him and some weird relationship with a teenage girl.
Oh, he'll get.
And it's played like it's called something Daddy or something, and it Chloe Grace Moretz.
I Love You Daddy.
I Love You Daddy. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And she's in it, and she's completely disowned it, even though she seemed to be okay with it at the time when she made it, and she was over 18 when she made it. So there. So people decide what they think, and then they change their mind.
He will sit on that project. It will come back, and it'll come back.
It'll be a double.
And
DVD.
it'll make him million.
You know what? Maybe they'll put it on some sort of double pack with that movie that Jerry Lewis made about the clown crying.
The day the clown cried. Okay, so I wanted to move on to FXX because we did watch a show on there called Man Seeking Woman, which was one of the... I
like that show too. That's
one of the great comedies. We talked a little bit about it in the previous episode, but I do want to say that this is a show that is just incredible, and it's only lasted 2 years. It was canceled.
I think it lasted. It may have lasted 3. I think there might have been a third.
It was just 2.
No, only 2. Only 2.
Wait a minute. No, let me see. There was
the only thing I didn't like about it was, and I guess it's because it hit a little too close to home, of watching a man be represented as such a nebbish idiot that always fucks up. Like it kind of pisses me off. Of like, I just want to smack the shit out of him.
Well, it isn't just that. It is that this is such a surrealist, kind of experimental kind of comedy that has this literal sensibility to it. So there are things, it doesn't even matter. I mean, like, there's one episode where Jay Baruchel's ex-girlfriend is dating Jesus Christ. And the reason that it's Jesus Christ is because this has to be a man who is better than any man and better than him specifically. And it's Jesus Christ. And then there, it's taken to such an extreme point, and there's so much visual comedy in it.
Although that just reminds me of, like, that's almost like a ripoff of, like, on the Sarah Silverman show, and we'll get to Comedy Central. There was an episode of I think it was a couple episodes where she literally is dating God.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like a middle-aged black man, but then she has to dump him because he gets annoying.
Well, she might. Okay, but the thing about it is, she might have taken that from the book. There was a book called Man Seeking Woman on which the show was based, and it was published several years before.
Oh.
So it's based on the life experiences of this guy, and he was just like putting all these scenarios down in his head, and he was talking about, why can't I find a woman? And eventually, he does find a woman. He gets married to this girl, and I guess the show kind of ends there because it's no longer a man seeking a woman; it's a husband seeking a wife, which is kind of a serio-comic tragedy in its own way.
I mean, I'm certainly seeking one. I'm
especially if there are kids involved. When there are kids involved,
well, I have no kids, and I'm out there looking, and man,
I swear to God, I don't get any time alone with my wife anymore. I really don't.
Well, that's the life you chose, man. I mean, is it a bad thing? Don't you love your family?
Of course I love my family.
Would you rather be me and be out there looking for anybody to love you in any way possible? No.
Now it's just a race against death, I found, as a 46-year-old.
Well, that's true. I mean, we're around the same age. We have more days behind us than ahead of us. It's just the way it is.
And death has a brand new pair of Nikes on, it's just...
It does.
Not to get too dark. Now, okay, FXX also, now when we moved back to New York, was in the middle of their big push for viewers, which was the Simpsons Marathon. They took every episode of The Simpsons up to that point, over 300.
Well, you know what? Now that if they do that again, they got to take that Michael Jackson episode out.
God. Moving along to Life Unscripted. The Learning Channel, maybe call it the All Reality Network. Sister Wives, Trading Spaces, Addicted, All About Sex, Big Hair Alaska, Big Sexy, Buying Naked, 19 Kids and Counting, Kate Plus 8, Best Funeral Ever. This reminds me of Idiocracy. Now we're going to talk about this. This is where you learn how to do things, right? No, it's not. Except you remember a time when it wasn't about that.
It was literally like something. Here's what I remember. We had a University of Washington cable channel, kind of like a public access thing. And they would basically just show educational programming from the university, lectures, things like that. But for like half the day, they would just pick up what was the Learning Channel at the time over the satellite, so they could fill up their day. And it would basically be documentaries, like basically super like the stuff so cheap that even Discovery Channel wouldn't get.
Well, can I ask you? It seems to me if it's called the Learning Channel, then we would see programming like how to build a table or how to
no, we would
hang
actually.
a picture.
You know what? Okay, you know how like PBS used to have telecourses?
Kind of.
It'd be some of those. It would be. There was actually like a movie review show, and I remember when we had it because they were doing a review of the National Lampoon's, or not National Lampoon's, but maybe it was National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Okay.
So this would have been like a late '89 and into '90, and I remember watching that. It was a very sort of Siskel and Ebert kind of show. They seemed to be branching out into like basically by the time they got to a certain size. Discovery Networks bought them up and made them part of their service, and basically became sort of the crazy person version of Discovery Channel. Like, Discovery Channel is all like, Planet Earth and all these nice documentaries, David Attenborough and all these things. And then the Learning Channel would be all the crazy stuff, like the reality programming. I think there's like the new one now is like the 90 Day Fiance.
The 90 Day Fiance.
Yeah, something like that.
And well, I have to preface any talk of this by saying I tried to look for pictures of various things because I do a lot of picture hunting for these episodes. I couldn't find any pictures about a lot of the shows that they show because you type in stuff like all about sex, even the Learning Channel, all about sex, or Big Sexy or Buying Naked. It's nothing but porn. You can't find anything but porn.
They're the channel that did Honey Boo Boo too, aren't they?
Here comes Honey Boo Boo, which was an extension of another show, right? It was what was it?
The one with the beauty queens or something, with the crazy woman that keeps getting put in jail for assault charges.
Is it the toddlers and tiaras?
Toddlers, tiaras, something like that. Yeah.
You said something that I thought was interesting, was that it kind of reminded me of the Michael Keaton movie Multiplicity, directed by Harold Ramis. You keep cloning and cloning and cloning. Eventually, you're going to have one that isn't quite there.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, first he makes one that's a little too masculine, then he makes another one that's a little too feminine, and then they get together and decide that they're going to clone. I think they get together and decide they're going to clone one more, so they make a copy of two, and then I think they call him three. I guess
three.
He's special.
Yeah.
And the way that they resolve the whole thing at the end of because they kind of like, spoiler alert, nobody dies, but they basically decide to kind of go off and have their own life, and then they get a job for three, and these like makes pizzas or something, they find a use for him. Something.
The movie ends in a very sweet way, actually.
Yeah, that's a good movie, by the way. People should see that movie.
Yeah. So, best funeral ever. I mean, like, what is that? I don't understand.
I don't know. Well,
when you put it together, you're rating it like you would cupcakes or something, like the best looking cupcake, best looking coffin, best looking corpse.
I'm just thinking best funeral ever has got to be a black funeral because it's going to be entertaining.
So, damn baby, get your big ass off me. Now I said before, this reminds me of Idiocracy because in the movie Idiocracy, there are little things. There are movies. There's a movie called Ass, of course, where it's just 2 hours of a guy's ass in black and white. I might add, to give it an art house feel.
I'm sure there are lots of you go on like Pornhub or X Hamster. I'm sure you're gonna find ass. Just put in ass, you'll get Ass the movie.
There are these shows that Dax Shepard watches in the movie, which remind me so much of this.
Yeah, he's hooked up to a chair.
It's very lurid, and it makes me wonder just how popular the Learning Channel is.
It's popular, but you got to understand. Okay, I'm not gonna speak any names, but I know someone who watches the 90 Day Fiance and things like that, basically to make her feel better about her own life, because it's like, at least my life isn't dating these schmoes. At least I'm not marrying these idiots.
Okay, all right, there you go. There's an audience right there. That's an audience who can look at this and say, well, at least it's not me.
That's a lot of what it is. I
Jesus
will watch.
Christ! I go to the grocery store. I come home. I go to work. I come home, and that's it.
Yeah.
I'm not buying anything naked. I don't have ridiculous hair. I'm not addicted to. I'm not addicted to sniffing glue or.
Well, I mean, isn't that why we watched the Ozzy Osbourne show, just to see what's Ozzy gonna do?
See, that was, I don't know. The thing about it was Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne is a story unto himself. So you put him in a situation where he's got a wife, he's got his children. they're
he's
living
brain damaged now. They're
kind of in
basically
this
trotting
house.
him out and putting him in adventures, and it's like, he's kind of brain damaged. Why are you wheeling
Dude,
him out?
he was actually like that in real life. This was not a performance. I met him.
I know.
I met him at HMV. He signed my Black Sabbath record, and I said, can you make it out to Dave? And he's like, I'll just make it out to Dave. I was like, dude, I just said that.
Well, remember, this is a man who snorted ants. Remember that?
He snorted ants. He bit the head off a bat or something. I don't know. Whatever it is, a lot of it is probably hype just to sell his records. But
I think the bat thing was he didn't know somebody actually gave him a real bat. Like, he thought he was just goofing off, and then he's bit it. He's like, hey, I just bit the head off a bat. What the hell?
He's like Rick Moranis in Ghostbusters when he just drinks the hot water in the coffee pot and he just smiles. Actually, no, he's drinking the goldfish bowl.
Yeah.
And he just looks at Al Ramis and smiles.
Yeah.
Let's move on. I want to talk about the Travel Channel because I do watch the Travel Channel.
Now, aren't they part of that whole Discovery service now?
Well,
they must be. Like, I'm thinking. Well, maybe they're not. There was like a chunk of channels, like I don't know. I think they're part of another chunk where it's like the DIY channel and a couple other channels. I think that Travel Channel.
I wouldn't be surprised if Discovery had their hand in the kitty a little bit on that one. But
now I would think Travel Channel is almost like the opposite of the Learning Channel, where it's like you watch this and you dream to be this good. Like this is the thing that makes you feel bad.
It started in February of 1987. It was founded by TWA, which was Trans World Airlines, and that makes sense to boost airline patronage, I guess. Maybe after Lockerbie, people didn't want to get on airplanes, but the channel. So it was travel logs. It was like, come visit sunny Cancun, and they also showed reruns of the lifestyles of the rich and famous. Stuff like that, where you.
I'm Robin Leach. I'm Ellie Madley, and I don't know why.
So you're sitting there in your living room with the curtains closed, and you're sitting there in your underwear eating like 5-day-old pizza, and you're like looking at all these beauty spots, Cannes, go to the Cannes Film Festival, go to visit Australia, visit these different places.
Maybe you don't want to go to New Zealand these days. I'm just
No, probably not a good idea. Avoid New Zealand at all costs. But these days it's just kind of an extension of Discovery in that way, because there was some fun oh man. I don't know. Did you get the Travel Channel? Do you get the Travel Channel over in your?
It's probably on my thing somewhere. I don't watch it though, so.
There were 2 shows that I watched religiously. One of them was called Toy Hunter, and it was an awesome show with this guy Jordan Hembrough, who runs a toy store, like a upscale collector's quality kind of toy store in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. Maybe in Jersey City or Hoboken, someplace close to the city. It has to be, I think. And he would get all of these he would go on these journeys, and travel still is sort of implied in the content of the show, because he travels all over the place looking. He went down to Mexico looking for just vintage toys that nobody played with. He was, being a toy collector, it had to be stuff that was still in good condition. But if there was something so rare that was opened or something, like there's one episode where he just goes on a whim because he gets a phone call. He goes to this old couple's house, goes into their attic, opens up their boxes, and finds the classic Star Wars action figures in mint condition, in box, still wrapped up in boxes. And he finds them, and then within that episode, he sells them for like $20,000-$30,000 to some collector.
I actually sold when I had to move. I had a bunch of old Star Wars toys. They were very, very used. Mm-hmm. But I was able to sell them. I got like $300 for some old beat up Star Wars toys.
Son of a bitch.
This was in 2015. This would have been right after the buildup of the hype of Force Awakens. Maybe that helped. But and they were all, and a friend of mine, and she kind of brokered the deal. I gave her cut.
Man, I would have
like $260.
I would have bought those from you.
It was like a snow speeder that was like half.
I don't think I knew you.
You didn't know me then, no.
Yeah.
I was a different man. I was a simple man then. I didn't know nothing. Now you show me the ways of the world.
Okay, you might have gotten more than $300 out of me. Just saying.
I had some basically chewed up action figures, like a beat up, I think I had the twin pod cloud car, most of it.
Oh.
I had the snow speeder that was kind of broken, and I had let's see, what else did I have? Like a half of one, like a Hoth play set, and I had a Yoda, and I had a bunch of action figures. Some of them like original, like late '70s action figures. So some of them like the weird, the funky looking Han Solo.
Well,
stuff like that. Basically, just way overused.
All that stuff, you know. I mean, like all the classic Star Wars figures were not that great looking. You know, it was a lot of people like to have them because it's nostalgia. It reminds them of. I have two Star Wars lunchboxes filled with old action figures of.
This'll.
I mean, like the newer stuff looks great. I mean, like I bought these really cheap action figures recently. One of them is Han Solo, and it looks just like Harrison Ford.
But this will get you all worked up. I had a 1976 King Kong lunchbox.
Oh,
I know, but this was literally like at that time. So
this is the kind of stuff that Jordan primarily dealt in. He liked to buy, and he sold, and he would have a space at conventions, and we followed him around for a couple of years. The show was only given like 3 seasons. It stopped running after that. There's another show called Burgerland that I absolutely adore as well because I love cheeseburgers. You love cheeseburgers?
I love the cheeseburger.
This guy had a blog called Burgerland. He would go from one place to another. He got the show, and what he does is travel across the country, goes from state to state to sample the very different kinds of cheeseburgers that can be found. You know, whether it's out in the Southwest, Southeast, maybe your neck of the woods, you guys, everybody has their own version of what they call a cheeseburger, and he eats them, he reviews them. It's, you know, and if you love cheeseburgers, this is a great show. And this is where we run into the problem with the Travel Channel. Once again, we have a cable network that is initially prescribed to be one thing, and then they change. So now they're moving away from travel and getting into food. And we already have like a bunch of food channels. But fuck it, we need more food. Cupcakes, cakes, whatever. You know, we already live in a sedentary world where people are sitting around watching TV, and now we have shows that make us want to sit around, watch TV, and eat. Netflix is like this too. Bronwyn watches this show called The Great British Bake Off. Have you seen that?
No, I have not.
It's just British people. They get a bunch of other people together to make something. They give them a recipe, and they make it, and they sample it. And this is pretty much what the Travel Channel has become. And I was thinking, the Great British Bake Off is great, but what I really want to see is a show called The Great British Beat Off.
Whoa! Hello!
That was my $5 joke.
I'm sure there are sites you could go to. I could give you some links if you need that.
About the Great British Beat Off.
The Great British Beat Off.
What? Well, Reginald, let's whip it out.
Yeah. Let's get Louis C.K. and we'll have some fun.
It's called the Sackle Jack.
Yeah.
We'll jack it. Okay.
Beat it. Just beat it.
Now, we move on to Court TV, which would later become True TV. And of course, they switched formats. And it wasn't. Court TV, the most that I can remember about it was that back in the early 90s, you had a lot of high-profile court cases. You had the William Kennedy Smith rape trial, which they showed segments of, because they made that trial public. And I remember back in the day, it was a law. It was a federal law that trials not be televised.
Yeah.
Because there were.
We have like those court drawings, you know, people used to see.
Yeah, you used to see just pictures that somebody drew. Hey, well, this is what he looked like when they told him he was a murderer or something like that.
Yeah.
And this is what the district attorney looked like, getting all pissed off and pointing his finger at. And we had high profile trials. And what's more, it was meant to kind of protect the jury as well, or keep the jury from being influenced by the coverage that a case would get. So yeah. You would actually have to sequester a jury. You still do that now, and they don't show the jury. A lot of times in court cases now, the jury members will come out and they'll talk to the media about what they were thinking and what was going on. You tried to get as much information as you could to kind of formulate an opinion on your own if you wanted to make it kind of like a sport, like you were watching a baseball game or something. Well, I think they're going to win. I think they're going to lose. But then it becomes very sensationalistic around the time of William Kennedy Smith, and the person who was the accuser, they put like a big gray blob over her face so that we couldn't see. But then, you know, the newspaper would show their picture anyway. And then after that, O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson became that was the trial of the century until it wasn't. Because
well, it was a trial. I mean, hell, I mean, just the go before the actual trial, he was like, it was the whole Bronco chase was before that.
Yeah.
Like that. It was like, that was like, I mean, we talked about CNN a little bit. That was kind of like a big deal.
We're talking about kind of like enormous amount of publicity around this.
Yeah.
It was huge. It was, and the verdicts and everything that were coming out. And then after, from what I understand, after the trial was over, and even after the civil trial was over and all the verdicts were in, this Court TV started by showing segments, hour-long segments of the OJ trial, and it became very popular. And I guess now the rule is if everybody signs off on it, then you can show it on television. That seems to be the major rule anyway, as far as depicting real-life people.
I wouldn't want that. If I was under trial for anything, whether I was guilty or not guilty,
when it eventually happens, it's not going to be on True TV for you.
Well,
right?
Also for you. Yeah, of course. You know what? I want a fair jury, which I probably won't get because the way that they pick juries is fucking ridiculous. People get screwed over all the time, and people are so easily swayed because like the juries are picked, you know, from they try.
It's
to,
a
like,
lottery. It is a lottery.
An average swath, and then they okay them or they don't, but like or whatever.
Yes.
But
well,
I'm like,
yeah, I had jury duty a couple of years ago.
And your average person is stupid. I'm sorry. I have very little faith in actual humanity.
Well,
I mean, most people can't be fair. They get confused. They see evidence. They can't do it.
There's too many. I must I disagree with you just a little bit.
Right.
I was picked for jury duty. I went down, and the group that I was with, very, very reasonable, intelligent people. And what happens is a process called voir dire, and in voir dire you are questioned by the defense and the prosecution, because what they're trying to do is figure out a way to either keep you or get rid of you right away.
Mm-hmm.
And the particular case that I was sitting in on was police brutality, basically, of a guy who was caught red-handed trying to steal, but he was beaten by the cops. I mean, like, you know, whatever it was. Have you? And the question that was asked of everyone was, "Have you ever been involved in an altercation with the police?" And I was.
Yeah.
I was basically profiled because there was a crime being committed, about a series of purse snatchings in my neighborhood by a tall white guy with black hair, and I was grabbed on the street, just hanging out with my friends, smashed up against the wall. I had a gash in my head. I was very upset about it. Nobody apologized. They all walked away. I said, "I want your badge number." He said, "Fuck you. That's my badge number." I told this story to the defense attorneys, and they were like, "Okay, get him the fuck out of here. Get him the fuck out of here."
Yeah.
Or the prosecution was like, you know, they didn't want anything that might harbor a prejudiced attitude in the case.
Well, see, you are a unique case where you are a very honest person. There are so many people are such fucking liars on so many levels.
Well, I got to say there were about 40 or 50, because I was on the last day of selection. There were 40 or 50 people who had the same kind of stories. And by the way, it was the whole swath of colors. So don't anybody get in their head that this is a black thing, this is a white thing. There were blacks, whites, Hispanics, everyone under the sun all had altercations or incidents.
So the cops hated everyone, basically.
Yeah, yeah. It was well, you know, I mean, it's just the way it is. There are cops, and there's the rest of us, and that's how cops view the world. Everyone who isn't a cop, you know, might as well be a bad guy. That's how they see it.
All right.
It was very interesting. As I was walking out, I was given my walking papers. Thank you very much, Mr. Lawler. There was somebody in the back of the room, and I'm heading toward the door. He looks at me and he shakes his head and says, "I can't believe that story." And I was like, "Dude, man, it's fucking real life. It just happens." I think he might have been a journalist or something writing an article about jury selection, because he just seemed really shocked at my story. But Court TV kind of it changes that dynamic, because it makes you an active part of the it turns our justice system into entertainment, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it shouldn't. That's a very to me, that's a very sacred, our like laws. This is what keeps the marauding hordes from just completely destroying what's nice about everything. We need these rules, we need these laws, we need the rule of law, which I don't want to get political, but we need courts. We need the rule of law. We need to protect these things.
But
these are sacred. These keep everything functioning.
But again, David, I'm going to point out that we live in a much more transparent society the world gets smaller and smaller.
And
it's
most
just
people
simply
can't be trusted
impossible.
with it.
Well, it's simply impossible to have a fair, impartial jury. You know what you should do if you want true justice? Take our court and put it in Europe. Find a neutral, or Australia, or something really far away from this country.
How about New Zealand? Why not?
New Zealand, whatever. I don't know. Greenland, Iceland, Germany. Oh, I don't know about Germany. Okay.
We'll put Bjork in charge.
and you have to get away from this world in order to have a fair trial, because everybody's got an opinion about something.
Yeah, and you certainly do.
Well, yeah, everybody, no matter how much you say that you are unbiased, you are biased.
Yes,
I even say you're unbiased is kind of biased in a way, but that's I see nothing except the thing is, if court TV says, or if there was a court TV now, there isn't. It's True TV now. But if court TV suddenly came out and said, we're not permitted to show trials anymore, it goes against the rights of the accused and the rights of the people doing accusing and all that, and it makes a mockery of the court system, you're going to have journalists and you're going to have the public at large, and because of social media, you're going to have an enormous groundswell of anger about this and say, you're violating our rights. We have every right to know what's going on.
That's
you
true.
know that there's going to be a fight. There's no way. The genie is out of the bottle, as they say.
Well, okay, if I'm not mistaken, it used to be, before all this stuff ended up on TV, that you could basically, as a citizen, you could sit in on a trial, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, well, you still can. You still can.
And you still can. However, that's a whole sort of process. If it's too easy, it loses its value.
Right.
Like everything. If it's too easy. Now, it's kind of set up like, if you as a citizen want to see our judicial process, I think you probably have to sign some sort of waiver or something. You probably have to like do so. If you're just putting it on TV, people don't have to be filtered to have access to it.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like they wouldn't let I'll put it this way. Say there's a trial. They would not let a crazy person that is literally mentally disturbed and has a gun on them, they would not let them into a court, because they know anything that happens in this trial could set them off and they could flip out, okay?
Yeah.
You put it on TV, there's nothing stopping this guy from flipping out after watching what's on this trial, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, again, I have no trust in humanity. We're fucked. We're going to hell.
It's not about that for me. I don't.
But okay, I'm sorry.
I don't really look at it in the fatalistic way you do.
I do.
I would say that there are ways around it.
I deal with the public every day, and I'm like, oh man, there's no hope. I mean, I'm not saying there's not a lot of good people, but really, I mean, even if you have if 99% of people are okay, that's still 1% of people that are fucking it up for everybody. Well, and that's literally, I mean, we live in a country of 300 million people. That's
Well, I'm a firm believer that the good outweigh the bad. Because if the bad outweighed the good, there'd be nothing but chaos and anarchy.
Well, I'll put it this way: if your sandwich was 1% ass, you'd taste the ass. There's the ass, and you would taste it. So it's like you can't one bad apple, to quote Donny Osmond. One bad apple, the whole something. You know what I mean?
If you've ever had a hot dog, you'd know that.
Hot dogs are probably 10% ass.
Yeah, exactly. As long as it tastes good, that's all we really care about.
As long as it tastes good, well, you cook it first. You have to cook it first.
Mm. So Court TV became True TV, which is it takes the variation, because when Court TV wasn't showing trials, it was showing shows about murder and documentaries about murder.
Oh yeah, there's this show called Snapped. Is that on there, or is that like a Lifetime thing because they like to scare women?
It is on True TV.
All right.
There was also a show hosted by John Waters. You remember? Called what was it? Death Do Us Part. Till Death Do Us Part.
All right, that was more sort of a funny take on death and murder.
John Waters is a great. He's great because he's obsessed with that kind of stuff. He's obsessed with when things go wrong, when there's tragedy, when there's murder.
Depravity.
He and I share an obsession with the Manson family murders. I mean, it's just, it's very interesting to watch these things, and also, John Waters has a certain amount of credibility because of fucking Pink Flamingos of all things, and Serial Mom. He's obsessed with that whole idea. Mm-hmm. And the melodrama that accompanies it. So he did that show too. I think Howard Stern might have even had a couple of shows that were produced by Court TV. But then True TV sort of extends from that, and now True TV is sort of about true crime. And there's also some original stuff on there too. Unfortunately, a guy like Adam from Adam Ruins Everything, and he really does ruin everything because he doesn't do his research. He winds up coming up with ridiculous stories and episodes and stuff like that, and calling them comedy when at the end of the episode you're just sort of like staring off in the distance going, that wasn't funny. But next time we're going to be discussing the final installment of this has gotten so big. Cartoon Network, sci-fi, that kind of stuff. And of course we'll probably spend 90 minutes on that and also arguing as well.
Yeah.
So until then, I'm the Russian bot, and I was joined by the NPC, and we bid you adieu and enjoy your cable box. And remember to catch the Great British Beat Off on Netflix. Good night.
Fuck you!